Shalom. First thing first, I want to give all praises, glory, honor, and power that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles at Great Millstone, those who rule well and who I learned this truth from. Salutation to the brothers stiffly pushing this one truth, in all sincerity and diligence, risking both your lives and freedoms to do so. And shalom to the rest of the elect, as we all await the second Exodus coming quickly by the hands of Lord Yahweh Shai. This is your brother Rakakabar. All right, back at you again with another lesson. All right, entitled Fortify Your Minds. All right, resist temptations and learn to say no. Okay, fortify your mind, which pretty much I had a definition here for fortify, which means to provide a place with defensive works as protections against attack. Okay, to provide a place, and in this scenario, your mind with defensive works as protection against attack. All right, because hey man, ultimately, we gotta fortify our minds, all right, within the truth and just on our day to day, okay, from all these different types of temptations, man. Okay, all these different types of temptations out here, and it may even be things that are lawful, okay, but just because something's lawful doesn't mean that you necessarily need to do it. All right, it may not be beneficial to, what you have going on at that particular time. All right. And, that's also a common thing in the world, people just having to learn to say no. All right. Because whatever the case may be, if you don't want to upset somebody or you don't want to, whatever it is. But really, man, you have to learn to say no. OK, you have to learn to resist all these different temptations. Like I said, even if it's things that's not necessarily off. OK, this is 1 Corinthians 10 and 23. It says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things do not edify. OK, for example, man, you may need to take a break from the alcohol. You may need to take a break from the liquor because it may not be conducive to your what you got going on for your health. So, you may have to put it down for a bit, man. OK, there's nothing wrong with drinking, the liquor or the wines. But, if you got liver problems or, you need to do a detox, a deep detox, then, hey, it's not expedient for you in that moment, man. And that's when you got to learn to say no. Your coworkers want to go out for a drink. And I'm just using an example, or go eat some food, that's lawful to eat. But if you trying to, pursue certain health goals, man, and get yourself right, you got to learn to resist certain temptations, man. And, I'm just giving an example, but you apply it within the truth as well, just resisting temptations, man, and learning to say no to things because that ultimately strengthens your self-discipline. OK, we gotta be more self-disciplined, man. And I'm speaking to myself first and foremost, and, like I said, you do things, you go out, and shit. But, sometimes you got to learn that not everything is has to happen in that moment, man. OK, and a lot of people, have that fear of missing out spirit. Hey, which I ain't gonna lie, I used to have that shit, man. You don't want to miss nothing. You want to feel like you ain't missing out. But then you get to the point to where you realize, man, hey, it's gonna be the same shit, man. Is gonna be here, in a, you know what I'm saying? The same shit is gonna be here, man. You really don't miss out on shit. You know what I'm saying? But, you know what I'm saying? This is Proverbs 25 and 28. It says, he that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. Meaning your spirit or your mind is not fortified, man. If you don't know how to resist temptations, okay, whatever they may be, all right, you know what I'm saying? You're like a city that has no walls, man. Meaning the enemy can easily come in and fuck with your ass, man. Okay. Even when you deal with, let's just use food, for example. All right. Say you want to, abstain from certain foods for the time being just to get your health right. You may go on a fast, whatever the case may be. Well, if you're not able to, put those walls up, put that wall up to say, hey, look, I'm not going to eat this. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to mess with the GMO foods, the processed foods, fast foods. That's you putting that wall up, man. You go on a fast, you avoid this shit for a minute, or you avoid it for however long because you know that shit's not good for you, man. But if you don't got them walls up, you just you every trigger you get, a commercial come on, an ad come on. Now you want to go snack on something, or you now you feel like you gotta see because you're not fortified in your mind, man. Okay, and it's really about being disciplined. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, we all struggle with certain things, but it's about making sure you can rule your own spirit, man. All right, it says, all right, because scriptures also say this. Let me see if I can find this. Yeah, Proverbs 16:32. It says, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh the city. See, he that ruleth his spirit better than he that taketh the city, man. Because really, like I said, it's about, being able to rule yourself, first and foremost, man. Have boundaries, have, certain defenses and whatnot set up. So being able to say no, because even, when you first come into the truth, it may be harder for you to, resist certain things that you once had done because of, friends and family, and you don't want to feel left out or like an outcast or whatever. But at the end of the day, you gotta be disciplined within yourself, man. You gotta learn to, you gotta learn to be disciplined, all right, within yourself, okay, and resist all these temptations and shit, man. All right, because hey, Satan is just waiting for a moment for you to slip and be weak to come in, to enter in, man, and fuck with you. All right. But it said, yeah, fortify is to provide a place with defensive works as protection against attack. All right. So pretty much just, building up that mental fortitude, man. Okay. This is Matthew 26:41. It says, watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. All right. See that? Because the spirit is willing, man. The spirit is, we got to, like I remind myself, we have to disassociate from the flesh. The flesh is weak. It wants all these little temptations, these pleasures, these little desires, all of this mundane shit is pleasing to the flesh, man. But that's when you got to fortify your mind and say, no, man, resist that shit, lock into the spirit. And, like I said, you can apply it to whatever it may be. You may be going on a fast, and we know how that can be. It can be tough for some people to, stick it out. But that's really when you just got to lock into the spirit, man, and do what you got to do. OK, but that's really the point. Lord's willing, it was edifying. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah, Bashem Kakadash, DTA Wababa Ball. Shalom.